All right, cyber traders, good afternoon. Welcome on back. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and all the good stuff in between there. Of course, today being Monday, December 23rd, just right before Christmas and Christmas Eve, of course. Little housekeeping note with that to begin at least, but great to have all of our students and members back alike inside our live trading room. We got Matt, Gillis, Dennis, we got Robert, Barbara, Philip, M, Wendy, got a bunch more from earlier today. Maybe not full house, right? You got a few of us commuting, just taking the time off, rightfully so. I mean, a few of us here at CTU just took the week off, and I get my vacation in throughout the year. So I'm here, you are here, we are good to go. And quick shout out, by the way, to Peter S. Quick shout out, by the way, to Sashil from earlier. I saw him before, and Stephen P. And a few more of us that are trial members just joining our trading room, just testing us out for the week, seeing if our style of trading is for you or maybe if it's not for you. Either way, and it's better to know than to jump headfirst into something and then you realize, listen, it's not for me, and well, you realize too late, and you're already down thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So we here at CTU do not want that to happen. That's why we have this whole trial membership to our trading room to begin. If you're joining us back on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works, we graciously invite you to join us in our trading room at the end of this presentation. But on the lower left first there, at Cyber Trading U, hit the follow or subscribe button right down below just to make sure you're in tune with these live streams, Traders Talk, we do every Monday afternoon. And I'll tell you what, we had a really good Monday given the circumstances. And quite frankly, I've been saying that pretty frequently, haven't I? Mondays have been pretty hot inside our live trading room, which is something we don't expect. You want to set the bar low on a Monday or a Friday, especially during the summer and especially during like a Monday or especially during a holiday week, we'll say. But you know what? You set the bar low, and then if any stocks make a pretty good move for you to jump on and you run it up and like whatever, it exceeds your expectations. I feel like we're all like a lot happier at the end of the day when we have our expectations exceeded, right? So I always like to set the bar low, and days like today, we did really well on a bunch of different stocks. RGTI, QBTS from earlier, LAES from Friday last week, that kept going. RCAT, we got the Palantir trade coming off of news. I know Fausto is all over that today. Let's talk about Rumble. Let's start off with Rumble here to begin. And, if anyone knows why Rumble moved up as much as it did, let me know right now. If you're like Dennis or Matt, Wendy, Danny, Roger, inside our live trading room, do you know why the stock moved up as much as it did? Do you know like the news that came out with it? We'll go over it if you don't, but I'm just curious if you are familiar with why this stock is up 82% today. We've traded the stock before, like more off of speculation. This actually used to move with Trump and any of like, it was well before the election, way, way, way before the election. But any news that came out to Trump at the time, Rumble got like a little sympathy play, RUM here. So does anyone know why the stock moved up as much as it did? We normally don't focus too much on news. This is why I want to go over it, because normally I'd always say, and I still say it to this day, just you want to focus on the levels first. If a stock is up 50% overnight, well, obviously something good had to have happened, right? Most stocks don't go up 50% just on their own without any sort of catalyst, right? So this was up off of seemingly some good news. And this was even from Friday, the end of last week, right? Crazy pop at like 4:15, 5 o'clock rather, in the after hours. And right there, news broke. So what happened? Well, Rumble ended up getting a $775 million investment. Sounds pretty big to me. If our whole philosophy is to follow the big money and out of nowhere, let's say if a company wins a government contract, okay, well, like, how much is the contract worth? If it's like $2 million, that's not like really that big, right? If it's like a $2 billion contract, then I'd like to think you're probably going to see a good reaction off of it. Well, this is no government contract. This is just a straight up investment. But folks, 775 million, that's not even a question of big or not. That's freaking huge, especially for a company the size of Rumble. Now, who invested in them? Well, this is pretty interesting. So for any of my crypto heads out there, any of my Bitcoin people, any of my crypto heads out there, basically the company known as Tether, TETHER, in crypto, USDT. Basically, that is a stable coin. And, folks use Tether to buy Bitcoin. A lot of exchanges require Tether in order to actually purchase Bitcoin. So it looks like Rumble just got a shit ton of either dollars, if not maybe Tether. Hmm. I wonder what they're going to do with this money out of nowhere that comes in, this Tether. I would like to think they're probably going to use a good amount of it and buy Bitcoin. That would just be my speculation. Now, regardless of that whole thought, anytime a company gets 775 million just injected into it, yeah, like to think it's going to make a pretty good move. So let's cover this from head to toe. And normally I would just start off by going over the orders. We'd look at the pre-market, book map. That is still the most important part. But you know what? Let's actually just start here first to begin because the lines are already on the graph. There were two huge levels for Rumble to work off of going into this move here today. It gapped above these prices, or at least one of them, from Friday. But otherwise, you could just tell back from end of 21, beginning of 22, pretty good support around this line. I marked it out at like 1074. Basically, generally speaking, it held under it as resistance shortly afterwards here back in the beginning of 23. Kind of just this area, right? Both of these lines together, you'll say, well, that would look to become support on a breakout this morning. Once it breaks over that, perhaps that could lead to a good run or it could flip into support over time. Now, the more it keeps going up, where's our next historical? Where's our next like big resistance area? Kind of right here, right? Back from October of 22, November, but kind of right around 1350-ish, 1345, 1355-ish. Now I have that line at. All right, well, both of those areas seem pretty easy on the eyes, right? Here, support, broke under it, flipped it into resistance there, pretty nice. And then the next resistance, pretty much around this area here, 1350-ish. Just case in point, like what happened to the stock today off of those two areas? Well, market opened up, it broke above it at first, this first area, broke through these two levels on the way up. Right place, wrong time, false breakout, and came back down. But it goes to show what we always preach here at CTU, and especially in our classes. Again, not to be like in teacher mode, but to be in teacher mode here. We have our classes this week, and a lot of this will discuss volume and just knowing how to take a trade altogether. So it is just to go over the fact that we talk about rebreaks, retests, or rebreaks. The more that this popsicle stick, this popsicle area keeps getting tested, it's going to get completely broken through. So it just took the next test right here a little bit prior to 10 o'clock, but it ended up just getting the job done. When a stock breaks through a big level, well, I should be expecting a pretty big reaction. So it ended up false breaking at first, but on the next stab at it, I'd like to say it made a pretty damn big move shortly after, from that 1050-ish area, hell, even up towards like 13. If you expect reversal time to be around 10:15, 10:30 in the morning, and you're riding it out here, you don't need for it to go up towards this next line in order for you to make good money. If you're in from this area and it moves up and you want to get out as it's like right under $13, as it's at like the previous high, maybe that's a pretty sound profit to begin with. Just realize that. You don't need to be perfect on your exit, not nearly as much as you need to be pristine, as clean as you could be, like on the entry. So good entries generate good profits, and this allowed the stock to make a pretty sizable run. Now, granted, it's obviously doing this level test perfect now. It broke over it, pretty underwhelming reaction at first. May have started off okay, but then came back down, chippy, then broke below it. So this area now flips back, rightfully so, into resistance. It's holding under it. So if I'm interested in this trade later today, I'd like to think the more that 1350-ish area keeps getting tested, retested over time, you'll get the same reaction as you had like here. False break, then maybe the next move it'll try and break higher. Who knows? All right. Now that's like all before going into bookmap. That's all before even digging into like the heat map aspect of this all. So that's just going over basic chart levels. But let's at least now kind of combine level 3 and level 4. But Yeah, going into the market open, you had a resistance here basically at 1089. Big sell order showed up there even prior to 8 o'clock. So that was out there for about an hour, hour and a half prior to the open, more even, right? 1089, you have 11 bucks right there too. So if you had missed it off the first chart level, well, this is your next technical level based off of the heat map here. So, it's pretty similar. It kept moving up towards that 1089 price, basically held under 11, but it was chipping around that 1089 price. And the more times it kept doing it here, well, by the time it cleared over 11, that was it. I mean, so game on as soon as it broke through this iceberg area here from 1089 to 11 bucks. But after that, resistance at 12, same thing basically. False break, it held under it, retest, retest. The more it's testing it in a short span here, well, it led to the higher high, right? So this was as clean of a move as you can get within the first 30 minutes. And granted, much like it did top off later on, every roller coaster does have a top, and it did eventually top here intermittently and came back down. So even this year at the VWAP, VWAP held great as support. Went right down to it. I think it may have just hovered above it. I don't know if it crashed into it even, but just kind of generally held right above the VWAP line and then moved up higher. So there is actually multiple entries on this trade based off of either A, seeing resistance get tested over and over and over. The more times it's testing in a short span, right? All right. Well, for Lee, Wendy, Matt, Gillis, Roseanne, Richard, Bill, all of us here in chat, just answer this for me if you can. You do every week for me, so I appreciate you, especially over this whole calendar year as we're wrapping up 2024 now. Final traders talk. Oh, no, actually, that's a lie. We got one more traders talk before the end of the calendar year. So just to say, you've heard this question often enough. When a stock breaks over resistance and it runs afterwards, what would we anticipate that resistance flipping into? Right? Support. So those are the two styles of entries that we just advocate for, irregardless of where the big money is trading at. But you got to know where the big money is trading at first, right? So unfortunately for me on this trade, like what did I do? What did Josh the trader do here on this stock? Well, if you really want to know my story today, I got my colleague, my sidekick Rich out this week, and basically I'm like one screen down. So going into the day today, I told myself, like personally, I'm like, I can't be multitasking too much because I'm gonna just get caught looking, or I'm gonna get caught slipping, not looking really as the stock is going the other way. So I wanted to jump into this, but I was gonna wait to see if it could dip lower towards this area and flip, the original historical chart level into support. It just held higher off the VWAP and then it moved up from there, right? So I didn't get the entry I wanted. And then even here we had class I was teaching from 10:30 to 11:30. So maybe later today there's a good shot for me to try and get in on this trade, right? I mean, if we look at the spread right now, real time, it's about a 3 to 5 cent spread. It is not a category one type of move. So you got to be careful. You got to make sure that you don't take a trade on the first level test. Wait multiple times. So look what's happening, even here. It at least tested resistance once. The more times it could press up against it, I'll feel better. So there still could be plenty of room left on this stock, but I wanted a better entry at a lower price. Just didn't get it. That's all right. Now, what did I actually focus in on then? Like, what did Josh the trader actually do? Well, if I'm not going to multitask as much, then that means I'm going to trade slower moving stocks. That's me speaking personally. We were calling this out all from the market open. Like our students nailed this trade. But if you want to know what I ended up doing today, I took two stocks today. That was it. The first was ONDS. I wish I could, not as much. I mean, I could have taken a better profit, I reckon. But again, it was good enough. And I was teaching at 10:30. So this stock is like something that we're pretty familiar with. This is one of the drone companies that were trading back from like a week or two ago, right? So it's in the news. It's a stock that we're familiar with. Quick little shout out, by the way, to the great folks over at Benzinga Pro. We appreciate them, of course, over this past year. Ryan Faluna, give them a quick follow as well on social media. But otherwise, though, ONDS, I got the hat tip from to Ryan there because he was talking all about it on social media, and I put two and two together from last week. So here we are this morning. Stock was moving up a little bit early, and I said, okay, let me focus on something like this. Had a good spread, good order book. Now, let me just bring up level 4, but I'll show you where I took this trade. So market opened up. It was just chopping around a little bit here, and it was starting to inch back up a little bit higher. Notice that you have big volume here on the book map. This column here on the far right, the CVP, basically shows pent up volume, but from consolidation. But most of it is off 160. So I used 160 as a resistance. And from that point, it led to a pretty clean entry. So I jumped in at the time on the break over 160 on this ONDS. I got in at 161. VWAP price right there too in white. So pretty good area, I felt. Now, if it were to have pulled back, then I would have been like, okay, right place, wrong time. But it ended up inching up pretty nicely, ran up pretty well over the next 15 or so minutes. I got out, what was that, like 169, 160? Yeah, it was 169. It was dipping under 170. So I made 8 cents on the trade. All right, still good. It's a cheap stock, so I'm not expecting a home run. It was slow anyway, so even furthermore, for that reason, you have to know your worth on a trade. So after these icebergs showed up, it started to dip. I wanted to give it a little room to see if it could try and revert back up. Maybe it tried. Yeah, it did move up a little bit higher afterwards. So I was in class at this point. I got out with my 8 cent profit. Listen, on 2,000 shares, $160. I'll take it, right? Now, either way, it did push up higher. It did hold higher lows. It moved up more. Well, here at this stage, I don't really have as much interest on it just yet because I need to see a better level play out. Um, I guess maybe a good little chart top here around 175. Maybe that could flip into support if it dips down here. So maybe 175 could be a good bounce level. But when you have resistance here at 188, and then now definitely here at 193, you don't want to fly too close to the sun. So that's where, simply put, I have no business on the stock right now until it could either try and build support lower, or if it can go higher, then, if I have to take the trade from the higher price, but with better conviction, so be it. All right, folks, give us a quick follow on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works, at Cyber Trading U, just down below, especially if you're new to our streams here, our channel. But otherwise, though, ONDS was just one of two. I just did ONDS. Then the second one was the MVST. Now, I will fully say now at this point, because I want to be a good example, right? Because I tell students all the time, don't trade while you're in class. I want you to be focused on what I am presenting to you. Now, at the same time as I say that, if I'm in a trade like this, it's slow as molasses. This thing is not doing too much. And if I have my stop set, then I could still teach and come back to this trade to where, well, hey, if it doesn't stop me out, nice. If it stops me out for a -1, then so be it. Who cares, right? That's how I played this stock just before, as I was actually in class teaching. But I ended up jumping into this trade before class started. So to cover this move here, the MVST, Fausto was a big fan of the stock. He was calling it out this morning. It was on our, I think it was on our pre-market watch list. No? Oh, no, it wasn't. Oh, no, and you know what? He called it out after the opening bell. Wasn't on the morning list, and it wasn't even on the pre-market. It was like pretty flat, right? So it was like showing some activity just from the overnight move, but it was more flat for the couple of hours prior to the open. But ding, 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 market opened up, took off. Fausto was all over this on the initial call out here, ran up pretty well. All right, well, let me ask our traders here this question. Where do we see a big spike on the far right side? Pretty simple question. Now, I was going to try and word it a little bit more difficult there for you, but otherwise you'd be answering 190 as far as the red line on the heat map. No, I want you to look on the CVP column. Look on the far right. See that big spike at 175, right? So over time, it built out as a bit of a level. And from there, I ended up jumping in the trade slightly higher. I got in at 177 at the time as it was trying to push higher. So led to a good entry, but I almost got stopped out. It did shake back down, held over the VWAP price. And then, it bounced at least from there. But, just going over this trade here, I had a student I was chatting with just earlier today, and he was a little worried about like the icebergs here. He had like 3 big sell orders. 190, 195, and $2. So, he had chatted me on the side, like, just saying big orders there. I said, yeah, lots of resistance. Tough for it to move much higher, but you may get a 20-cent move if it can go off from 180-ish area to $2. Now, that was like, at what time was that? Like 9:51. I'd messaged my student back on that. So a little prior to 10. Well, I started to realize that the 175 level was building pretty nice here, like sticking out pretty damn good. Prior to all of that, see how 180, right? Prior to the consolidation after 180 was sticking out pretty good. So that's where I was telling my student 180 there. But over time, 175 was building out even more so. So by the time it started to break under, then back over, yeah, it was like a dead duck for a little while. It was like slow and flat for a little bit there. Not really like the best thing to look at the time. But you know what? It was moving from earlier. As long as it doesn't make a lower low, perhaps there's a chance for it to make a higher high. So it eventually started to move off of that 175 area. And now at this point, it's just the issue with this trade. It ran into the wall of resistance here, 190, 195. It kind of topped off at. And, it still has yet to test two. But, as long as we can keep with the higher lows, there's a pretty good case for this to try and at least make a push up towards two. It doesn't need to test it or even break over it, but if there's a case for this to try and sneak back up a few more pennies, I'll take it. If this pulls back a little more, perhaps I'll just pull the trigger and take a few cents profit or like 6, 8 cents profit out. Like, okay. I knew today with it being a holiday week, plus it being class week, plus one of our staff members out, I had to kind of do some of the dirty work, some of the heavy lifting for us in the room today. That's where I'm not going to try and get caught watching the shiny object in the room. Where was it from earlier? We were going over this in class. Yeah, the T raw trade. This thing, pretty nice run. Nice move from earlier. Topped off right around reversal time. But there's a difference between stocks like this and stocks like an MVST. And you could say the same. There's a big difference between stocks like T-Raw and stocks like LAES. This is just as good of a move, I'd say, as the MVST. And this was like making a better pop probably. So let's actually cover this coming up next. So this was also on our watch list. This was actually on the main list here going into the open. It was on our pre-market list. And then it was on the morning watch list, both LAES here. So listen, it was on our pre-market list because it was starting to inch back up a little bit here. Popped early in the morning. It was a little flat for a bit, but going into the 8 o'clock move, it was trending back up, right? So it looked pretty healthy. And then, of course, going into the open, it was still there. It did pop a little bit in pre-market. It was dripping back down a little bit here, but otherwise still potential for higher lows. So we put it on both lists there. Now, otherwise, going into the market open, I will use this for right now, although it's not just 1 penny price. This is probably within about 5 to 8 cents worth of room here. There's just a bunch of volume built up here between like 360-ish and 365-ish. So it's about a 5-cent window, we'll call it. It's not like it's like 1 penny cent level, but you could see like a pretty stark difference between the volume that was built up around this 365. I guess if I were to plot one line, I'll go like the higher of the two. So 365, decent volume. If it can break over that price after the market opens up, perhaps there's room for this to try and make a better push up to 4. That's where you have your next resistance here. After that, 5. Now, when the market opens up, we're going to talk more about this in the phase 2 class. We have phase 1 today and tomorrow, and then later this week and next week, we got the phase 2 curriculum. Well, in phase 2, we're going to talk more about this here. But for students like, Ray and Gillis, Dennis, I'm just saying gold, platinum, diamond, C2 level students like Wendy, Matt, Barbara, Roseanne, just a bunch of us here. In phase 2, I'll cover this, but I want you to answer this if you can. When the market opens up, we typically look to wait the first 5 minutes, right? And I know you know that part. When the market's opening up, what are we like looking at on bookmap, on time and sales? There's something pretty important that we'll look to cover in class even this month, but I use it as a big level. What am I like watching for right at the market open there? Philip abbreviating, Gillis there, right to the punch as well. The opening bell print. So watch what happens. Market opens up, big ball, big dot on bookmap here. Now look at the size of this spike. This is about the 12 minutes prior to the opening bell, then the first 5 minutes. So just giant size difference here. And it's mainly from this big print. 643,000 shares. That's obviously a massive. Where we're calling this level here at 4 pretty big. There's a 131,000 share limit order out there at 4. Well, exactly how big, how strong, how much respect should we give the 643,000 shares that got filled at 360? So this instantly becomes a level. You know that? Now, this is actually pretty close in price to the 365. 5 pennies off, obviously. So you could use the combination of both of those levels now together, especially since the opening print is here. Both of them together will certainly become resistance support. So it shook around it first 5 minutes, and yeah, tried to nip above it here even. Right place, wrong time if someone tried to take it here at this instance. And then right place, very much right time here. It breaks back over it. This generates your entry otherwise. Like this could be a great entry. It broke over this as a working resistance, we'll say. And much like a lot of us wrote back to me earlier, well, once it runs from that area, the stock made just about like a 25-cent move, ran off that resistance break here. Notice how this flipped into support even afterwards. So it dipped one more time here, you could say, but both of these lines together, plus this line, plus the VWAP here, don't count this out. So it's actually 3 lines here together that are creating like a spider web of support. And then from that point, it ended up lifting off. And, for any of my students here that ask, like, okay, well, where's the entry then? Where should I enter? Both. It's not like there's like just one. That's it. In this case, there were multiple. If you missed it off the break through this level on the way up, then you answer that question. What happens when resistance gets broken through and the stock already runs? Then you got to try and see if it could flip into support. The same exact thing as to why, at least on Rumble, it didn't happen, at least at the time. It held higher. But I wanted this resistance to flip into support, right? Here, this resistance flipped into support. Gave you 2 entries. Both are great. If you missed it the first time, it gave you, a test of support here and made the same exact move higher. So that's where I always want to point to you. It's not like there's just one. And as this kept going up, don't get me wrong, there could have been multiple entries here on this trade. I will say I would have expected this to flip into support. I would have expected this to flip into support. It broke right over $4, ran well. This year, I could see myself trying to jump into. I didn't take it from here, but I could see myself jumping in here and taking a small loss. Obviously, not the right move here. It pulls back, right? Now, though, the more times it's nipping and testing 4, there is room to try and take this trade actually off the 4 level. Maybe like not the greatest run. It didn't technically make a new HOD, but it gave you like 20 cents worth of room, 25 cents. So, and now even at this stage, this thing just won't quit. It keeps stabbing this level here, still going up. So maybe there could even be a better sign for this to run higher later on today. But that's just been the thing. This has had a tough time making the higher high, breaking new HOD. But there's been multiple entries on this trade, at least either from the 360, 365, or otherwise from 4. The first one sloppy. All right. So, hey, if you have any questions, folks, let me know just in relation to these stocks that we've been just kind of going over here. Otherwise, though, I just want to go through email here, just check out one or two before we wrap up. Okay, so here's one that just came in from one of our new students that joined us from last week. And I'm going to be speaking to her coming up, I think, on the 26th. Just with coaching one on one. And, we'll have a much better ability, for us to work together, going over what your platform looks like, what to use at least on your screen, especially if you're not on like the same platform that I'm showing, right? Everyone's on a different platform. Probably, I'd say half of us have Thinkorswim, but I have one of our new students that are on Fidelity, Active Trader Pro, and they're asking me just about how to set up stop orders, right? So more or less, it's kind of like a lengthier email. So, basically in summation, they're asking, which order do you look to set up, and what time do you look to place it? So this is something that we definitely take a lot of time in our classes to cover, and we're going to give you the real answer here. Obviously, I don't dance around any questions, but I do want to bring up, especially for one of our new students joining us from this past week. I do a whole class setting stops and taking profits, a whole class on that thing. So that's really where I'll cover it with you in the actual curriculum. But otherwise, coaching one on one as a new student, you get like a handful of coaching that we'll have the chance to schedule over the next month. As a platinum or diamond student, that, and that's where we're actually like trading together, you and I. But for any of our new gold students, I'll have the chance to work with you one on one in the coaching program and get your platform set up. Just go over the basics with you. And as far as how to set up a stop order on Fidelity, I'm sure it's a little bit different compared to TradeStation, but I personally use what's called a stop limit order. So, if you're using a stop limit order to try and take a trade, it gives you the ability to basically set two different price levels for you to, get your order triggered at. Basically, if it touches one price, like let's say, for instance, here, complete hypothetical example, if I'm going to jump into a trade and use a stop limit order to protect me, well, let's just pretend I jump in right now. It's not a good time or price, but let's just pretend. All right. Well, if I wanted to say, okay, I'm going to set up a stop order. So if it breaks below $13, I'll be out. There's a difference between a stop market and a stop limit order. And if your platform only says stop and then stop limit, it means that where it just says stop, that's a stop market order. That means stop market order then. But basically, we use a stop limit order such that, if it hits a certain price, then my order will attempt to get filled. But I'm actually giving it like a few cents worth of wiggle room in case if it's some crazier drop, faster drop down, because there might be a chance where my stop order actually doesn't fill me. So basically, we cover this more in the classes, but the stop limit order protects you such that you have two prices that you need to select: the stop price and then the limit price. It's one order consisting of two prices. So that's what I primarily use when it comes to putting my seatbelt on and setting up my risk otherwise. If you're using a stop market order, you're running the risk of you getting a really bad fill for a couple of reasons. If there's like a server issue within your platform, like I've had server issues on TradeStation where because of their malfunction, I don't get my order filled at my price. And it's like a pain in the ass. You got to call them up and like kind of bitch them out a bit. It doesn't happen often, but things happen, right? Like, computers are still computers. There could still be errors and whatnot. That could happen to any one brokerage. So that's the first thing. Secondly, that could certainly happen to you, not just the brokerage. Like, what happens if your internet freezes up or your computer glitches out, right? So, getting a stop market order, there's not really a cleanliness with getting a specific price that you want. Now, that's where I'll have a lot more time to cover that in like the classes, then definitely the coaching just on the 26th here for my student. Well, I'll have the chance to like actually see your screen on a Zoom call here, and you'll have the chance to go over that together. All right. That's the case for all of our new students, by the way. And again, like I said, any of our platinum or diamond level students, You know that, and I'm working with you more on like the live market stuff, like actually trading the markets together. But I'll tell you what, we're going to finish up in just the next few minutes here, folks. If you have any last questions, definitely let me know here. But I'll tell you, it looks like Rumble's starting to rumble here. So looks like we're going to move back up towards that 1350-ish area. It's like I always say, the popsicle stick theory. The more times we keep twisting, bending, snapping that flimsy, stupid popsicle stick, it's going to break in half. The more that this keeps getting nipped at, tested, poked at, whatever, it's going to get completely broken through, right? That's my mentality behind it, at least. So, it really hasn't tested the exact price here since it broke below it as support. It's been kind of just loosely hovering over it or under it. So I would want to see it kind of test and nip that level, like actually hit that price and break over it a few separate times from this point before I get more confident about the move up higher. Look for a false break coming up here. Look for a few. But the more it could do that from this point, I'd feel more bullish about continuation later on today. All right, folks. I don't see anything else here in the chat board. Typically on holiday weeks, a little bit quicker, more abridged version of our workshop traders talk here. If you're on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works. A couple of things before we wrap up. Tomorrow is a half day for all of us here in our trading room, of course. But tomorrow is a half day, Christmas Eve, right? So market closes up, I believe, at 1 o'clock Eastern. We'll be finishing up the phase one stock course actually the hour before the close there. So you don't need to attend the live class, at least for phase one tomorrow. If you're, with family, if you're commuting, if you're prepping up for the holidays, it'll be on your dashboard as soon as we finish up the live. And you know me as the instructor, like I put as much equal value in the recording and anyone watching replay as you would live. I just want you to remember that. So, if you're not tuning in tomorrow live, you could always just watch it on a recording. We'll have it up just shortly afterwards. No sweat. But tomorrow's a half day, Christmas Eve. Then tomorrow, Wednesday, rather, Christmas Day, obviously market is closed. So, we're off. And then we'll be back Thursday, Friday. But otherwise, though, just remember, it's like the next couple Wednesdays here, markets are closed. New Year's Eve is a full day. Next Tuesday is a full one. And then after that, New Year's Day, we're off, right? So keep reminding you, at least as we head into next Monday. Monday, we'll run it right back for Traders Talk as usual. But at least otherwise, folks, if you're joining us on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of us there on social media, at Cyber Trading U, just look to hit the follow or subscribe button down below. I want to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holiday Season all together. Just have a great time off. If you're not trading, this is the time of the year where we cherish time with family. At least I hope, and if that's not the case, then no sweat. At least take time off from the market. You don't need to be spending your time here behind a bright ass computer screen, as there's really not as much opportunity. There's going to be a lot better opportunity after the holiday season. So take time off. Do things that you find fun. Take the time off to travel. Take the time off to go to a movie. Do something that you enjoy. That's kind of what we kind of do here in order. That's why we trade, to make the money in order to take the time off afterwards. All right. But either way, we'll be here at least. Otherwise, and all inside our live trading room. Peter, Martin, Ray, got Gillis, Dennis, Lee, Wendy, Barbara, Philip, all of us there right now. If you are not joining us throughout this week, if you're taking off early, again, even furthermore to you and your families, want to wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holiday Season all together. And if you're sticking around, perfect. I got some people to talk to then. I'll be here at least all throughout the day today and tomorrow, at least otherwise. And, folks, our next meeting inside our live trading room will be at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, just for the afternoon meeting. So we'll take a small break in the action right now, and then I'll be back on at 2:30. All right. I'll talk to you all then. Take care.